today's video, I am going to be redoing one of the most popular videos on my channel, which is how to use bulk files to make quick but adjustments inside of your account. Now, seeing as that old video was for the legacy version, and if you can see now, the legacy version is now depreciated, which means that those of you who are not used to the new 2.0 bulk files may not know all of these tips and tricks when using bulk files to make bit adjustments. So that is what we're going to be walking through today, step by step. I'm also going to be giving you some pro tips when it comes to storing your bulk files, and also some tips when it comes to some organization or some other little hacks that you can use to keep records of your old bids if in some circumstances you need to say revert them. So let's walk through that today. So here's what we're going to be doing. First, I'm going to go through, hey, how do you just download the bulk file? Then we're going to go through sort of how you find where you actually make bid adjustments inside of a bulk file, how you might go about those adjustments, some tips for constructing your new upload file. And then we're going to go through how you would actually upload the file. All right, cool. So let's get started, which is how do you actually get a bulk file? So what you'll do is you'll go into the account, and here in the sponsored ads, if you pop it out, you'll see this tab or this section here, which is called bulk operations. If you click on this, you're going to be then taken to this view, which is where you would download and also where we're going to go through and upload our bulk files. So the first thing you need to do is select the date range. Now this date range is going to specify what data is going to be contained in the bulk file. So for yesterday's data, if I simply just selected yesterday, it's only going to contain the performance data for yesterday. And you're going to see that specifically when we actually go through the bulk file, show you what the performance data is. But you want to make sure you have a decent amount of data for this. So I would recommend doing at least 14 days, potentially a 30-day window. It's also often very good practice to not select today's date. So for instance, if I click last 14 days and I go in here, it's actually going to include today's data. But today's data isn't fully updated. So it makes a lot of sense to maybe eliminate the last 12 to 24 hours. So sometimes we'll eliminate the last 2 days of data. It really depends on what you kind of see in your account as far as how often, how accurate the data is, say 1 or 2 days out. We like to eliminate at least 24 hours or so. So select whatever date range. Again, whatever date range you select here is going to contain the performance data. So that's what you're going to be doing, basing your bid adjustments off of, right? So if I said, oh, okay, so this ACoS is 50%, I need to bring it down. Well, if I'm only looking at yesterday's data, then it did 50% yesterday. But again, maybe all of the sales aren't completely up to date because spend tends to update a lot quicker than sales do. And so you want to, again, that's why we eliminate that last 24 to 48 hours. All right. So now that we got our day range, we need to check some of these boxes. Okay. So the first one that you're going to want to check is this campaign items with 0 impressions. This is super important. If you do not select this checkbox, what's happened is your bulk file is not going to contain any items, be it campaign, any ad groups, and again, any keywords that don't have any impressions on them within the date range that you've specified up here when you selected that for the file. Now, the reason why this could be wrong is oftentimes in our bid optimizations, what we do is we look at things that don't have any impressions on them and we want to increase the bid. Well, if we don't actually have any of those items in our bulk file, we can't increase the bids on them. So this is super important. I like to keep placement data, and I like to, now if you want to make your file maybe not as large, you can only select, say, one particular ad type. So if you only want sponsored products data, you might only select sponsored products. Now you can use bulk files to optimize all of your ad types. So sponsored products, sponsored brands, and sponsored display ads now with this 2.0 update, which is awesome. And so oftentimes if you're doing bid optimizations, you might want to select all of these. If you have a really large account and these files are really, really large, then you might only select one of these ad types and then do them one at a time just so you can process the file easier. I'm going to leave them all checked. Now, the other thing is this guidance for sponsored products. Now, this can be helpful because it helps with the documentation and understanding what you kind of need in the dropdown. However, that being said, I kind of find it a little bit funky to navigate because I know what I'm doing. So I don't really want to retain this format for my own purposes. So I like to uncheck it. If this is your first time using a bulk file though, it can be super helpful to have some formatting guides because formatting is really important when it comes to bulk files. It's where the bulk or essentially all of your errors are going to come from. But seeing as this is going to be a step-by-step guide and I know what I'm doing, then I'm just going to check it. The other thing that is newly available in the bulk files 2.0, which is phenomenal, is actually you can get search term report data inside of a bulk file, which I find amazing. However, for my purposes and what we're doing today, I don't need this information because we're only doing bid adjustments and I don't take into account, I'm not using the search term data when I'm doing bid adjustments. And so it just adds to the size of my files, which again, depending on the size of the account, it can be kind of difficult, things with loading times, etc. So if you don't need the information, it's not a bad idea to uncheck it so you can create a small file. Now that we got all this ready, what we're going to do is we're going to select create spreadsheet for download. And once we have that, you're going to see it start to load here. And once it is available, you'll see this little blue download icon. Now, one thing to note is that recently we've noted that bulk file processing, especially the downloads, takes a really long time. I've actually reached out to the internal team. Apparently they identified kind of the source of the issue and they're working on it, but just know this could take a long time. So depending on when you're watching this, you might want to go and like process this for creation and then go and do something and then maybe come back and check later. You can also try like refreshing the page to see if that doesn't really make it load too much faster. Other options, and one that we do, is we will have a designated team member who goes through and pulls bulk files for the rest of the team so they can process them. And then that way the account managers or whoever's doing work on the account could just come in, get straight to work with the file. That's an option as well. Okay, so once you are done, you would click this button, which is going to download the file, and then you would open it up in your spreadsheet software. Now I'm using Google Sheets here, but you can also use Excel as well. So that's the downloading of the file. All right, so now let's get to the formatting and how you actually find the bids that you need to adjust in these files. So this is not going to be a complete 100% step-by-step walkthrough of a bulk file. Potentially I'll make that video, or maybe like a campaign launch video I think would be helpful. But as of right now, we're just like, where do I find the bids? What filters do I need to use to figure out like where I can actually do my bid adjustments? Then we'll go through the bid adjustments and then we'll go through tips and tricks for storing and uploads. Okay, so we're just going to be walking through doing bid adjustments in the sponsored product ads. Now, like I said, you can do bid adjustments in sponsored brands as well as sponsored display campaigns. It's essentially like very, very similar. There's a couple additional columns, but the headers that we're filtering for are essentially all the same. So if you understand the sponsored product changes, pretty much can do brands and display campaigns as well. So what you want to do is hopefully pretty self-explanatory. You go to the sponsored products campaigns tab. Now these individual tabs contain all the data for that one ad type. So as you can imagine, sponsored products gives you all the sponsored product ads, sponsored brand campaigns, and sponsored display campaigns. All right, now what do we have to do? What should you understand when you open up this bulk file? Because there's going to be a lot of different rows, there's a lot of different columns, and like I said, formatting is key here. Now the good news for you is that when it comes to making bid adjustments, the formatting is actually really, really easy. Once you understand where to find everything, it's literally changing two things. It's two things in an upload. Like it's very, very quick, but you do need to understand, again, kind of like the filters and how to get to the information that you need to get to. And the main thing that you need to understand is this entity column. This entity column is going to be the one thing. If you had to only really comprehend one column in this spreadsheet, it's going to be the entity column. So what does the entity column tell us? The entity column tells us what information is contained on these rows. So I always like to think of bulk files as your entire ad account in a two-dimensional view inside of a spreadsheet. So you know how in the account, you got to click into the campaign, then you got to go find the ad group, and then you got all the products. So that's another tab. And then, well, you got to go find the targeting. So that's another tab in there. This is all going to be represented. All of these items or things are represented as rows. So you can see here, this entity here is campaign. So this row represents all of the information that I can find at the campaign level. Here we have bidding adjustment, right? So our bidding adjustment is the top down or top of search or placement percentages. So you know, you have to go into the placements tab. Well, that's right here. Campaign negative keyword. So this is a negative keyword added at the campaign level. Cool. As you can see, the benefit in taking things from Campaign Manager into a bulk file is that instead of me going, oh, I got to click here, I got to click there, I got to click here to find all of these things, I can now view them in one continuous view. And that's what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using filters to sort of condense everything. So if I wanted to say like, oh, what are all the campaigns in my entire account? And I want to find out information on those, I could do that. If I wanted to say, oh, what are all the ad groups in my account? I want to find out all the information for those on one single view. You could do that. And that's where, really the power of bulk files comes in, is being able to quickly do things. And then because bulk files can be used to enact changes in the account, you can take it a step further and not only identify what's going on, but then make actual changes, again, providing that you know the formatting, which is what we're going over now. So as you can imagine in this entity column, if this tells us what is contained on this row, then we need to filter the entity column to find all of our things that we want to make bid adjustments on, which in the case of this is going to be our keywords or essentially our targets. So what you want to do is you want to create a filter, and I've already created a filter here, depending on how big your spreadsheet is. It could take a second to do that. And so you want to hit clear. Again, I'm in Google Sheets, slightly different in Excel, but we're going to clear. So we're going to deselect everything. And then we only want to select the things that we can actually make bid adjustments on. So again, our targets or our keywords. So the things that you need to select, see this keyword, you select keyword in this entity row, and then you also want to select product targeting. So our keywords are anything that have, our typical match types, so exact phrase, broad, etc. And then our product targeting is our, category targeting, ASIN targeting. Okay, so now that we have isolated everything that is either a product target or a keyword in our ad account, there's a couple other filters that you want to put on here for things that are not enabled. So it is possible to change bids on things that are paused, but we don't actually want to do that because they're paused and we shouldn't be making random bid changes to things so we lose our historic bids. So what you want to do is go over and find these campaigns, so these state columns. So we have a state column. This is for the actual line item, which in this case is our keywords and our product targets. Then we have the campaign state, which says informational only, and our ad group state, which is informational only. So what you want to do is create this filter for campaign state and uncheck pause. So this is essentially saying filter out anything. We don't want to see anything that's in a pause campaign, right? And then we're going to do the ad group state. So again, we're going to uncheck pause. So we don't want to see anything that's in a paused ad group because it's possible that the campaign's enabled, but we enabled, we paused an ad group somewhere. And then the other thing that we want to filter out is any paused targets. I paused here. And this is essentially, because it's possible that we didn't pause the campaign, we didn't pause the ad group, but we did pause the target or the keyword. And so in this case, we don't want to make bid adjustments on things that are paused. So those are the two filters that you want, or four, filters that you want to put on there. So you want to target everything in this entity column. So we're only looking at the things we need to make bid adjustments to. And then we want to filter out anything that is paused. So we're not making changes on things that are paused. All right. So let me go through some of the informational columns to help you understand what the things actually are that we're making bid adjustments on. I'll go through the kind of performance columns so you can see, okay, how are things working? How are these things working? And then we'll go through how and where do you actually make the bid adjustments, as well as a couple like pro tips that will help you kind of make sense and keep track of any bid adjustments you made, which we found has been super, super valuable. Okay. So what are the actual targets, right? Before we actually get to how to make the actual bid adjustments, it might be helpful to know, how do you find out what things you're actually making changes on? And so that is some of in these informational columns, as well as some of the keyword columns, which we'll go over. But these columns right here, so this campaign name, informational only, ad group name, informational only, and portfolio name, informational only, which just means Amazon's put these in here for your benefit, which is awesome. And we thank them because they've actually carried down the portfolio name where that wasn't carried down before. There's actually some additional columns that they've put in here that actually help our workflow immensely. And so as you can imagine, campaign name informational only says, okay, this is the campaign name and this is the ad group name and this is the portfolio in where this target is located. And again, I'm going to go through what the actual columns are that tell you like what the actual keyword is that we're making the adjustments to. But this can be helpful because ideally you have really good campaign naming structure and you would simply say like, oh, okay, so this is the campaign name. If I have good naming structure, I can kind of identify maybe what products are in here. Hopefully I have really good ad group naming structure. It's not just ad group 1 or portfolio 1. Now these names have actually been changed for, confidentiality of the account. But if you had good naming structure here, I could probably say like, oh, this is the strategy of this campaign and this is what I'm advertising it. And it just helps you make really good decisions when it comes to bid adjustments, because if I saw that this was an aggressive ranking campaign, well, then I might be optimizing for order volume and velocity more than I would care about ACoS. Again, knowing kind of where something is located is going to help you when it comes to bid adjustments, all right? But the other thing that can obviously help you is just what you're actually bidding on. And so for those, you're going to look at these two columns and it is going to depend if it's actually a keyword or if it's what's called a product target, which is in the case of bulk files and ASIN, a category targeting or a auto campaign, which is actually some updates they've also done for the category targeting that is super, super helpful when it comes to understanding the optimizations. We'll get into that. All right. So the first one that helps you identify the keyword is this keyword text and this match type. Now, again, I've kind of changed these, so I'm not giving away, say, any information on this account as to like what keywords are actually being bid on here. But if you had an actual keyword here, you would be able to see what keyword am I bidding on as well as the match type. So again, that is helpful when it comes to the bid optimizations. You want to know what you're bidding on and then also what match type it is, because that can affect bidding strategies. Now, the other place that you can look if this match type is blank or this keyword text is blank is this product targeting expression. So you can see in this case, this is close match, substitutes, complements, which is part of an auto campaigns. Now, if I filter this out, I'm going to uncheck for the blanks. You're also going to see this ASIN. Now, just a heads up, these ASINs haven't been changed so that the length on them might be slightly different, but you would see all of the ASINs that you're targeting and you'll see this resolve product targeting expression here as well. And when I first opened this up, I thought, well, what's the use of this? Because, it's close match code. Like these are all exactly the same, until I realized if you go down to category targeting, there's actually a benefit to this. So if I scroll down here to category targeting here, I can see this is the way it's entered in the bulk file. And this is the way it used to happen before. So we're targeting this category, which is the browse node, which is an entire video that we have coming out on how you can actually launch category targeting campaigns and where you actually find this browse node to launch these category targeting campaigns. But the problem with looking at these, and the problem that I always had, was like just by looking at the browse node, I don't know about you, I rarely memorize ASINs, let alone browse nodes. How in the world do I know what category that I'm actually targeting here? Well, if you look at the resolve product targeting expression, they actually tell you. Now, again, category 21 is not accurate here. It would actually like say the name of the category in this resolve product targeting expression, which can be very helpful when it comes to bid adjustments. And if you look at, say, our campaign names and then also cross-reference that with what the category is, you probably can infer, say, how relevant that category is to the product, and that can help you inform, again, bid strategies. So we went through the filters we need to do. We went through how you actually kind of figure out what you're advertising on. Now let's go through how you actually identify how things are performing. Yeah, because that would be super important if we're going to make bid optimizations. It should be based on data. And these columns, these last columns right here, are where you're actually going to find the data. Now, I'm not going to go through bid adjustment formulas. There are some really amazing things that you can do, bulk sheets, and essentially writing your own bid adjustment programs, essentially. eventually. But right now we're just going to go through the information that is here and maybe give you a couple tips when it comes to sorting and filtering. So this is the information you get. You can get through impressions, clicks. Now they've added some of these. So click-through rate, we used to have to calculate this one. They now provide it. You get spend, sales, orders, and then units. Orders and units can be different if, say, someone purchased multiple purchases per order. Can be helpful. Conversion rate. Now this was also added. This was something that we used to have to calculate. They give you ACoS, your cost per click, as well as your ROAS, if you prefer to look at ROAS through ACoS. Now, a couple helpful sorting filters would be maybe sorting things by ACoS. Maybe you want to see what has the highest ACoS, and then those, bid adjustments need to be brought down. Another thing that you might want to look at is filter by orders, only looking at 0 orders, and then sorting by clicks, highest to lowest, to say where do we have high clicks. I probably need to bring those bids down. Other things that can be helpful is if you want to look at anything that has 0 impressions on it. Again, remember that filter that that checkbox we used when we created this file. This is another thing that I would want to look at. And you can also filter by things that have 0 impressions, or you might want to look at things that say, maybe only have 1 to 2 clicks and, filter out for less than 100 impressions or something. You can also sort by conversion rate. So say, oh, what has, the highest conversion rate in my account? That can be helpful as well. And so as you can see, you can just use these filters to kind of isolate the things that you typically look for in an account. So if you have your regular bid optimization sequences and you're like, oh, I always look at things that have over X amount of clicks and 0 orders, or anything that's over X amount of ACoS, or anything that has, a high cost per click associated with it, well, then you can use those same filters and isolate, that subsection of the keywords that you need to make the adjustments to. And then next, we're going to go over where do you actually make the adjustments. So let's go through this here. So this bid column right here, remember when I told you that there's only 2 things that you have to change and then do an upload when it comes to making bid changes in your account? This is one of them. This is your bid. It's essentially saying like, hey, what bid do you want to change this to? Now, I will kind of show you one potential issue here. Let's see if we have it in this account. And yes, we do. So you might sometimes notice where this bid is blank. If you ever come across an issue where a bid is blank, again, this is a recent update from Amazon. We used to have this huge, it was kind of like a sequence to try and find these. It was honestly kind of annoying, but now they've provided this. So if you ever see this bid row blank, you can look at the ad group default bid. It means that the bid was set to the ad group default and it's never been adjusted. So if you ever look at an account and you see a ton of blank bids, you know that those bids have actually never been touched since the campaign was launched, which depending on the performance of them, that may not be a great thing. So say I wanted to make a bid adjustment here, right? So this is an ASIN targeting. Maybe I have a really good conversion rates. Maybe I have low ACoS. I'm noting that these things are working well. Okay, I want to increase this. So I'm not doing any specific formulas here. I'm just going to put $2 here. Now this is what you would want to do, right? So you change the bid here. The next thing would be in this operations column. So this is only for the rows that you want to make changes to. I would put update, and that's all I would do. Now, I have an entire video going over the operations column, because if you're going from the legacy bulk files to the 2.0, the operations column is the one update that everyone gets super confused about. The rest of it is pretty much the same. So I'll link that somewhere where in the description or around here where you can go watch that if you're moving off of the legacy bulk files. But essentially the operations column says, hey, I want you to take this action with this information in this row. And in this case, in the bid optimizations, we're saying, hey, update the bid. So essentially what this does, it says, oh, what changes did whoever's creating the upload make on this particular row? Oh, it's been a bid change. Okay. And then as we do the upload, which I'm going to walk you through, upload is super simple. You would essentially upload this file. Amazon would look for some information in the operations column and say, okay, this is the only thing that has an update on it, so I'm only going to process this one row. So unless you put something in the operations column, it's not going to touch anything else in the bulk file, which can be helpful. Now, there is a tip I'm going to give you as far as keeping a record for yourself to understand what changes you made. There's a different way that I would recommend doing it instead of uploading the entire file, but you could could upload the entire file and it's only going to change this one thing. So that's essentially all you would do, right? So you want to isolate all the things that you can make keyword bid changes on. You want to look at the performance. You want to look at the campaigns and the ad groups, identify where this information is coming from, make whatever bid changes you need to do, shove update in the operations column, upload the file, bam, good to go. So that's essentially a workflow, and that's super simple. But what I want to do is I want to give you some advanced strategies, and these are some things that we do to help keep track of stuff. Because right now, say I change this bid to $2 as I did before, maybe this doesn't perform that well, or maybe I want the ability as a team lead to be able to cross-check what changes people are making. I want to make some changes, or if I enact these changes and then the account just doesn't perform really well, I would like a way to be able to quickly revert those changes. And that's actually one of the distinct advantages in a bulk file, is because it is an upload and because it's a spreadsheet. Yes, it does create a heck ton of things to keep track of, but you can also keep a record of all of the changes you have made, which is phenomenal, especially if you're making very specific changes for very specific timelines. For instance, Prime Day, I want to change, my budgets or bids in this case, and then I want to be able to revert them after those high traffic times. You can actually do that very, very easily. And I'm going to give you some pro tips on how to keep records to be able to do this. Because you'll note that the thing is, if I just put $2 here, there's no information what the old bid was, right? Some people just keep copy of these files to go back and check. I find that super tedious. I don't like that in my workflow. But what I've actually recognized, or what we've tested, is that if you have additional columns in this file, as long as these headers are blank, then you can upload this file and you can have a bunch of additional information in your upload files, and it's not going to screw up anything with your bid adjustments. So here's how we do it. We actually have 3 different columns for information. I think you'll be good to keep just 2 and then use sort of the highlighting option that I'm going to show you. So this is the way I like to do it. I like to keep a record of the old bid. So I'm going to undo some of my changes here. So this is my old bid, right? So what I would do is I would put a column to the right. And again, you can't say old bid. You can't have anything in this header or it's going to screw it up. But I would say, okay, so this is my old bid and I'm going to put this at a $2 bid right here. Okay, maybe I've identified that this one needs to come down. And again, I'm not using any bid formulas here. I'm just like, oh, this needs to come down. Okay, we're going to put that to $1.50. I'm just typing in numbers at this point. So don't try and make sense out of what I'm doing and try to identify like a bid optimization sequence. There is no sequence. There is no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing right now other than demonstration. Okay, so this is $1.80. Maybe I want to bring it up $1.85. And I would just go through and do my bits. Again, use the informational, data columns to say, okay, these are the things I need to look at in the account, but that's how I would go about it. So I like keeping my record, because what I can then do, if say all of a sudden this thing went to crap and I needed to reset it, I would have a copy of this file. And what I could do is I could go in here and I could uncheck the blanks and then just take these bids, copy and paste them over to this bid column, make sure I have updated the operations column, re-upload this puppy, and essentially everything just got reverted back to where it was. So it makes that workflow super, super snappy. Now, the other thing that I like to do, now, again, we have a whole bid optimization algorithm that we use, which actually specifies the reason of the change and how aggressive we're being with that change. And so we have an additional column that the software just automatically populates that for us, and then we keep a record of it. But a very quick and easy way to kind of identify what you increased and what you lowered, we like using certain highlight colors or fill colors. So in this case, right, I have this bid, I increased it. I like to just put it green. This one was a decrease, and so I would put it red. And this one was again an increase, and so I'm going to put it green. You might also use, I think we use like blue for if it was a no impressions bid increase. If we decreased it because of high A cost, just our usual optimization sequence, we put a red. If we had, maybe we significantly decreased this bid and we did did like, oh, we had like over 25 clicks and no orders, then we'll put like really deep red on it to kind of identify it. Maybe if we had, I believe we do deep like red staggered if we have clicks with no sales. And then if it's because we're lowering it because of high A costs, then we'll put a yellow flag on it. And then again, if it has like super high A costs, so like over 100% A costs, and we're drastically lowering it, we might have a deeper yellow. And so we're just able to keep track of. The reason why I like this color coding is because if I'm looking at, say, my bid adjustment, I could say, oh, I did more lowering than I did raising. Maybe that's why sales went down. So if you're going back to try and identify what happened, or if all of a sudden sales dropped, I might go in here and say, okay, what are all the bids that I lowered on, lowered things significantly on? Is there one of them that was bringing in a significant amount of orders that I over lowered on? And then I could just go in here and say, oh, okay, this is the one that I need to revert, only put update in this particular row, and then revert it that way. So that's kind of like a pro tip on, kind of keeping track of not only what you did as far as the old bids, but why you did what you did is really, really hot. I mean, if you want to get super crazy in here, you could have another column that's like has individual notes on them. I like to have a way where I can understand the information quickly, but it doesn't create a huge workload for me as far as like going through the actual optimization. So that's kind of my rule of thumb there. Anyway, so that is how I would, some pro tips about keeping records. Now, what's another tip when it comes to the upload files and keeping track of all of it? So one thing that you can do in bulk files is instead of uploading this entire file, even though, I could just put update in the operations column, you can also simply filter for only the rows that you want to make changes on, or only rows that are necessary. So another way that you could do this, and this is the way I like doing this, just to keep a very clean record for myself, is I will copy only the rows that I've created changes on, and then I'll put them into a new spreadsheet. So I'm going to do that here. Here's only the things that I need. Again, I have my color coding, I have my old bids, and then I can just put, again, you got to put update in the operations column, and then I'm going to drag that down and do upload. This is essentially going to be my upload file. Now, other things that you can do if you want to kind of keep this file for your records and you don't want to make any changes inside your original file, which is again another way that we do it. We keep the original files completely untouched, so we have that record. What you can do is when you filter, again, you filter for the entities and then you make the filters for the enabled states. You can then just copy all of that information and then put that in a new spreadsheet, and then anything you don't end up making bid changes to, you can just delete those rows. That would be another way of doing that. So again, you kind of have a clean interface to work off of. So this one is perfectly good to update. I do want to give you another tip that we've kind of used for organizational purposes when it comes to naming these files and our folder structure for saving these. But every single one of our clients has their own client folder. And then within that client folder, if they have more than one marketplace with us, we will have individual folders for each marketplace, because if you have a UK account and then a US account, those will require different downloads and different reports and different information. So we keep those things separate. And then inside those folders, we have another subfolder called bulk files. And this is where we store sort of our original bulk files, and we have a specific naming structure that we use for it. I believe we have like account name, marketplace, date that the report was downloaded, and then the date range contained within the file, which can be super helpful. Here, of course, we have bulk file demo sheet. And this is actually what we name our upload files. So inside of that overall bulk file, we have another subfolder that we call bid adjustments. So that's where we keep all of these records as far as just the individual bid adjustments. So we know if, oh, I want to go find the bid adjustments, it's not all conglomerated in one folder, you can quickly go and find it. And to be able to create the connection between these two, because it is entirely possible I would want to go look at this and then go back and look at the original file and everything contained in it. Honestly, the times that needs to happen are very few and far between. But if we need to do it, I need to know where this data came from. And that's where our naming structure comes into place. So what we do is we'll simply copy the name of the original bulk file, which is again in that bulk file. We will put it, so again, this is going to be slightly different because this is like a demo file, but pretending that this was, a good clean structure, you would put the original name of the file and then you would simply do bids. So if you were looking for, say, that original file, you could just copy this and then you would paste it in the search bar and you can immediately come up with the original file. Or if you search for the original file name, you would see the original files plus any bids that have been created based on those original files. So that is a super helpful tip. Okay, so we went through it. We know how to filter our file. We know how to find the information to make the adjustments. We know how to make the adjustments. You have a couple of pro tips as far as keeping track and records and color coding, as well as kind of our folder structure and your naming conventions. Now, the last thing you have to do, because remember, we only have to do two things, is one, we already made our bid adjustments and we put operations update. Now we got to upload the file. It's the last thing we got to do. Super, super simple. All you're going to do is go back to the account. You're going to go back to this bulk operations. You're going to see this. And so instead of creating a file, you guessed it, we're going to upload our file. So all you got to do is click choose changes. And this is going to bring up a window, which you will select wherever the file is on your account. I'm going to select a file right here, which is not the correct file, so I'm not going to click it. But if you're done, you will click upload to process changes, and you will then see it appear here in uploads, and it should say processing. Now, this is what you want to see. You want to see finished successfully, successful process changes. It will say how many of them. Now, if you do have an error, so if it says finished with errors, what you can do is you can download the report. It will tell you which rows contain your errors. And I find that Amazon's error files are a lot easier to deal with these days. They're a lot more explanatory. But if you ever have any errors that you're not sure about, feel free to, leave a comment on this channel somewhere, because we deal a lot with bulk files, and so we're very comfortable in processing errors. But providing everything is uploaded and it's successful, congratulations. You have just made bid adjustments with a bulk file. And I have to say, bid adjustments with a bulk file are kind of the easiest and the quickest way to use bulk files. And again, you're only changing two things in the bulk file, doing the download, doing the upload. It's the simplest. And so providing you put everything in the right column, which again is just the update column and the bid column, you should be super good. So if you have any further questions on this, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you would like to have a glimpse into our bid algorithm and how we actually approach bids, there's actually an internal training that I released, and my team told me I shouldn't release it, and I did release it. So if you would like to check that out, video's up here.